Hello and welcome to another episode of Locked on Wolves. This is the postgame podcast. The Timberwolves fell in a tough one to the Phoenix Suns on Wednesday night, a game they led for most of. They didn't actually trail until the fourth quarter. I want to break down what happened in the fourth quarter, specifically why the Wolves failed to. Oh, also Deandre Ayton dropping a career high 35 points. How the Wolves just simply could not stop Deandre Ayton. We'll talk about, of course, the officiating, Karl-Anthony Towns, and all that as well. Welcome in. You are Locked on Wolves.
You are Locked on Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked on Wolves podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked on Wolves. I'm also the editor of Dunking with Wolves, the Timberwolves site on the Fansided Network. Happy Thursday, everybody. This is the postgame podcast. We're going to talk about Wolves Suns on the show today. Plenty of takeaways. We'll start with my biggest takeaway. First, though, a big thanks for those of you that do make Locked on Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, the show is free and available everywhere, really on all platforms, including YouTube, as well as all your favorites, Apple, Google, Spotify, and of course, our friends at Odyssey. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Locked on T-Wolves, and also my account at Beecken with two B's, two E's, C-K-E-N. All right. So Wolves Suns on Wednesday. Of course, Phoenix still without Chris Paul, although he's coming back soonish, it sounds like. Cam Johnson also did not play for Phoenix. So, I mean, obviously a couple of key players not available. The Timberwolves did have their full complement of players. I understand all that. That matters. Clearly, not having Chris Paul, one of the best, still probably 20 players in the league, is very significant. Still, a very solid performance from the Timberwolves for the first roughly 40 minutes of this game. The Wolves led. There were a couple of ties, but the Wolves didn't trail until a few minutes into the fourth quarter. I mean, this was a three-quarter, basically the Wolves lead for all of three quarters. Not basically, they did. And then the wheels kind of fell off in the fourth quarter, which happened a little bit to Dallas on Monday, although that one went all the way down to the wire. This one got out of hand about midway through the fourth quarter. And it was a bit of a roller coaster, despite the Wolves leading for most of the way. I mean, the emotions were running high. The second quarter was a disaster for a lot of reasons, but entertaining, of course. And it was a really fun game. I mean, you're talking about two of the best offenses in the league. The Wolves, I think, were sixth in offensive rating coming into the game. The Suns are third, and the Suns are a really good defensive team. The Wolves are an exciting defensive team, and in that they're at least gambling, trying to commit turnovers, trying to be aggressive defensively. It was really just a fun game. My biggest takeaway, I want to start the way I typically do these post-game pods. If you're new to the show, I'll do a kind of an overarching key takeaway, and then I'll hit some smaller ones next segment. We'll close with individual studs and duds and focus on some individual performances throughout the game. But my biggest takeaway is, of course, the fourth quarter collapse. So I want to dive into that just a little bit. And then there's kind of a sub key takeaway, if you will, related to Deandre Ayton, who scored a career high 35 points in this game. The Wolves' fourth quarter collapse was not, it wasn't like there's one thing you can point to and say, oh man, they really failed to do this. Sometimes it's just a complete offensive breakdown. Guys don't make open shots. D'Lo takes too many shots. That's typically what happens in the fourth quarter. Occasionally, it's strictly the defense. The Wolves actually did a pretty good job of trying to slow down Luka Doncic late in the Dallas game on Monday. That wasn't their downfall then, but this was kind of like an all the way around, just like it's like all systems just powered down. The offense was sloppy. There were bad turnovers after being so good the first three quarters against a really good defensive team. I don't know that it was shot selection as much as it was turnovers, and then a couple of missed open shots that would have been timely to make. Defense was even a bigger issue, though. All of a sudden, it was like the Wolves weren't guarding anybody, and what had been a really competitive first 3+ quarters, Anthony Edwards on the ball. I mean, the Wolves put Anthony Edwards on Devin Booker. They've been putting him on opposing teams' best offensive players frequently of late, and he's risen to the challenge. I mean, Anthony Edwards was really good defensively for most of this game, and it was really impressive. But in the fourth quarter, and it wasn't just Ant, but the Wolves coverages, just the rotations were just like stopping. You'd get the first rotation, or occasionally the Wolves were switching pick and rolls. You'd get the switch, and then the backside wouldn't rotate, or the low man wouldn't come up, or it would be a dunk, or it would be a wide open corner three. There were at least 5 threes in this game. The Wolves didn't have anybody within 3 feet of the shooter, probably 5 feet of the shooter. And there were multiple lob dunks. There were multiple dump offs to guys in the dunker spot, primarily Deandre Ayton, with nobody there to slow the Suns down at all. Just a complete and utter defensive breakdown, sloppy offense. I guess in a nutshell is what happened in the fourth quarter. And we'll talk a little bit more about the Wolves' big three and their shortcomings in this game in a little bit. But there really isn't an excuse for it. It's like the Wolves played, again, roughly 40 minutes of great basketball defensively too, against a really good offensive team. Even with no Chris Paul, this is a really good offensive team. And they just couldn't, the fourth quarter, it's just things shut down. And the weird thing is, like Monday, they were competitive through the end on the road, against just a steady diet, just getting beat over the head with Luka Doncic initiated pick and rolls on the road, competitive to the last minute. Wednesday at home, they powered down after 40 minutes, essentially. My sub takeaway to this is the absolute complete and utter failure to stop pick and roll bigs that dominate in essentially short rolling on pick and rolls. They just find the soft spot in the defense. And Deandre Ayton, credit to him, he's phenomenal. I love Deandre Ayton. He's a fantastic player. He's such a good pick and roll big, and knows exactly where the soft spot is in the defense, where to hang back, when to roll hard. And then obviously really good around the rim. In fact, he missed 2-3 bunnies in the first quarter, missed some real point blank shots. He still ended up attempting 24 shots in this game, which shows you just how bad the Wolves defense was on him. And the problem is the Wolves don't want to put Towns on guys like that because, well, Towns is a mobile big. He doesn't quite have the defensive agility to stick with Deandre Ayton without getting into foul trouble. And Towns is foul trouble in the first place, right? Or foul prone, I should say, in the first place. We'll talk more about that later too. He ended this game with 5 fouls, but he picked up 3 late in the second, or I guess it was early in the third, but then picked up a 4th right after that, picked up a 5th early in the fourth quarter. And it's almost always an issue. It was certainly an issue in this game. And so the Wolves tried Jared Vanderbilt guarding Deandre Ayton for much of this game. I mean, occasionally they'd get this, they'd get switched onto, Towns would get switched onto Ayton. But for the most part, you had Vanderbilt guarding Ayton, and Vanderbilt had a really good game. We'll also talk about him later. This is one of his better games in a while, all the way around. But defensively, he's too short to contest a perfect lob pass. And they didn't, I mean, imagine if Chris Paul was playing, right? But I mean, campaign, Devin Booker, all night long, just pinpoint lob passes to DeAndre Ayton. Vando's just too small to contest those with any regularity or any success, really. And I mean, Vando's really strong. He's got long arms. All those things are true about Jared Vanderbilt. But DeAndre Ayton is a physical specimen, especially compared to Jared Vanderbilt. He's a lot bigger. He's stronger. And there was just no stopping him. And also, when Towns ended up on the perimeter, this was the other issue. Towns ended up on the perimeter a lot because he was guarding Jay Crowder for chunks of this game. And now your rebounding is essentially Jared Vanderbilt, right? I mean, there's not even a Jaden McDaniels available. So the Wolves are playing with, if Towns is on the perimeter, now Vando and Anthony Edwards are your biggest available rebounders defensively. And DeAndre Ayton ended up with 7 offensive rebounds, basically because Towns kept getting pulled out to the perimeter. Vando was left to his own devices in the paint to try and rebound. And yeah, he finished with 6 rebounds, but half of those were offensive. So Vando only finished with 6 defensive rebounds. DeAndre Ayton had 7 offensive rebounds. Karl-Anthony Towns had 11 total rebounds as well. But again, he was so often pulled out to the perimeter that this was just kind of a debacle when it came to the glass defensively for the Wolves. And that's part of the it was essentially lobs and pick and roll game, short rolls for DeAndre Ayton as well, and offensive rebounding. And that's how he got his career high 35 on 24 shots. He, of course, capped it off with a 3-pointer when the game was pretty much in hand in the fourth quarter. But phenomenal game for DeAndre Ayton. The defensive plan for Minnesota against him made some sense, and it was essentially, we're not going to let Devin Booker beat us. We're not going to get Towns into foul trouble. Well, both those things still happened as Booker went off in the fourth quarter, and Towns still got into foul trouble. So the plan, theoretically, I still think was okay. The execution was poor, and that's why the Wolves lost, essentially. All right, I have a few more takeaways that I want to get to here next. I want to talk about, among other things, Jaylen Noel, because, of course, and he's fantastic. I want to talk about the officiating, which is been a hot topic of late. It's funny, as soon as the Timberwolves get more competitive or competitive on a consistent basis, we start to focus more and more on the officiating. I want to address it because everybody else is, but I might have a different take than you would expect. So, all right, we're going to do that next. First, though, let's talk about our friends over at Truebill. Do you know why free trials renew without your consent? It's a business scam out to get you. Don't let greedy corporations pocket your money. Download Truebill to take control of your subscriptions. Truebill is the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions that you don't need, want, or simply forgot about. On average, people save up to $720 per year with Truebill. Because companies make subscriptions so hard to cancel, Truebill just makes it incredibly simple. Simply link your accounts, and Truebill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in just one tap. And your Truebill concierge is there whenever you need them to cancel unwanted subscriptions so that you don't have to. Truebill has over 2 million users and has helped save them over $100 million, such as Matthew B., who says, quote, in a matter of seconds, I saved $660 for the year on my DirecTV bill, saved $120 for the year on my SiriusXM bill, saved $840 per year on car insurance. Don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at truebill.com/lockdownnba. Go right now. Truebill.com/lockdownnba could save you thousands a year. All right, let's also talk about our new friends over at NBA Top Shot. NBA Top Shot's the officially licensed NFT of the NBA. Connect with a community of hundreds of thousands of NBA fans as a natural progression of fantasy sports, a way to upgrade your experience as an NBA fan. This is the future of what being an NBA fan looks like. It's part trading cards. Of course, every moment on Top Shot originates in a pack. Unlike trading cards, these aren't still images in cardboard. These are officially licensed NFTs of the greatest moments from NBA history. It's also akin to the stock market for the NBA. Every day, millions of dollars worth of NFTs are traded back and forth between tens of thousands of NBA fans around the world. Fantasy sports, there's an airline loyalty program for the NBA that's all part of being part of Top Shot and part of the NBA. They flew collectors out to Game 5 of the finals last year based on having Suns moments. They flew collectors out to the draft based on having rookie moments. They got to have dinner with first-round picks the night before they were drafted. They played basketball with Obi Toppin and Tyrese Halliburton. Investors in NBA Top Shot include Michael Jordan and Kevin Durant, plus Will Smith. There's also a ton of NBA players in the community, such as Tyrese Halliburton, Karl-Anthony, and Harrison Barnes. I hear people ask all the time, why would I buy a highlight when I can watch it on YouTube for free? Well, it's not just about watching a highlight. It's about having ownership stake in what's akin to a stock market for the NBA's greatest highlights. If you were to tell someone in 1916 that your piece of cardboard with Babe Ruth's face on it would be worth millions one day, everyone would think you're absolutely crazy. This is the opening tip-off of a digital age, and the NBA's officially licensed NFT will be a big part of that digital age. Imagine when the NFTs are even mainstream on social media. You can flex what you own around the world instantly, no binders and no shoe boxes. If you sign up for Top Shot today, the best way to start is by getting yourself a starter pack. You can pull an NFT of a superstar like LeBron or KD, or rookies like Cade Cunningham or Evan Mobley for just $9. And if you didn't pull your favorite player from the starter pack, you can snag moments from the marketplace that appeal to you. Challenges are the best way to earn exclusive moment NFT rewards. Complete challenges to unlock exclusive moment NFTs. You can treat Top Shot like the best of daily fantasy sports. Top Shot's moments can get you access to events and can be used in fantasy mini games on a regular basis. Be sure to go check out our friends at NBA Top Shot. All right, thanks again for making Locked On Wolves your first listen each and every day. For your next listen, be sure to check out the Locked On Now podcast. Nightly recaps of every single NBA game with analysis from our local experts. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. It's the absolute best way to get caught up on the previous night's action. You don't need to watch the highlight shows, peruse Twitter, or just look at box scores. You can get caught up with the specific local angle from each and every one of our lockdown experts, 60 to 90 seconds. You'll know exactly what happened in each game without having to do any of those other things to get caught up. Okay, let's talk about a few other takeaways that I have from Wolves Suns. Number one, let's talk about the officiating because we have to. The Timberwolves were whistled for what, 8, or I guess total for the game. There were 8 technicals. I think 3 of them were the Suns, 5 were the Wolves, if I'm not mistaken. There was also one that was initially given to Anthony Edwards that was taken away, which, by the way, mini rants on this. Edwards was called for a technical for an immediate adverse reaction to being called for a foul. Then another official corrected the call, decided to call traveling on the Suns before the foul. They took back the technical. I mean, am I the only one that remembers when Karl-Anthony Towns was given a technical for taunting, and then when they decided his shot didn't count, they kept the technical for taunting? What? Why did they pull the technical back here, but not? I don't know. And that's the sort of thing that gets me is the inconsistency. But I got ahead of myself. Let me start by saying I don't think that officiated is the story of this game, other than the technical happiness, I guess is what I would call it. Um, Officiating wasn't that bad. Karl-Anthony Towns is officiated unfairly basically every night. I'll say that, and that's my only real beef with how this game was officiated. For the most part, I think they did a pretty good job. The technical like explosion that happened, and mostly in the second quarter, just these guys just got it happens with players. Obviously, the players are getting carried away. The officials got carried away. Just like I mean, I don't think anything was ever really truly going to get out of hand. The taunting technicals, like just stop, right? The actual officiating of the game was not terrible. The free throws weren't out of whack for either side. Personal fouls, the Timberwolves committed one more than the Suns. Like I thought it was fair. I thought it was pretty consistent. There were a couple of touch fouls, and I guess that's my beef is the way Towns was officiated. At least two of his five fouls were just barely touch fouls. The blocking foul right after the slew of technicals in the second quarter was absurd. If playing defense and Booker initiating contact and Towns literally standing like this, with his hands up in front of him, he never extended them. He didn't push forward. He didn't body Booker at all. Booker initiated contact and Towns literally stood just like this. It was a foul on Towns. That's not correct. Then on Booker's, it was like a reverse layup attempt in the second half. Same thing. Towns kind of went over the top. Booker put out his off arm. Towns' only contact occurred on Booker's off arm that he was throwing out to the side. Should not have been a foul. The way Towns is officiated is not how we see other superstars officiated. I'm going to keep beating that drum because it's 100% true. I said this a couple weeks ago on Twitter, actually before Towns started getting more whistles offensively, that if Towns got the same whistle as Joel Embiid, those numbers would look almost identical, if not better, because Towns is a better shooter from the perimeter, obviously. Now, in this game, it wasn't as much that. I mean, it's still crazy. Towns only attempted 3 free throws, but it was more the way that he was officiated on the defensive end of the floor. And obviously, Towns gets carried away. He has to bear some of the responsibility for not getting into foul trouble, obviously. But there were just some bogus calls on Towns in this game, and it's very frustrating that the NBA continues to short one of their best players with the way he's officiated. Outside of that, though, I don't think the Timberwolves complained much about calls after the game to the media. They shouldn't have. That's my only real beef, and I think sometimes we get a little. It's easy to get really passionate about how the game was officiated when in reality it was fairly fair on both ends, other than the Towns foul trouble, which obviously on some level changed the complexion of the game, right? Cat could only play 31 minutes, and basically couldn't play defense down the stretch in this game because he couldn't afford to pick up a sixth foul. So I think that's fair to say, and I think it's important to point out that there were some issues with how Towns himself was officiated. My next takeaway is the big three vanishing late. I touched on this a little bit in the first segment, but D'Angelo Russell did not have a good game. We'll talk more about him in a little bit, but he scored 6 points in this game. He only played 27 minutes. And part of that's because Malik Beasley, Jalen Noel played well off the bench. We'll talk more about Noel in a moment too. But the foul trouble, again, completely changed Cat's impact. He had to sit from it was roughly the 10-minute mark to the 5-minute mark in the fourth quarter. That was a pretty crucial point in this game that Towns had to sit. And then when he got back on the floor, he couldn't touch anybody. He had to be extremely careful. That was a big part of it. Anthony Edwards had a good game overall, but he missed a ton of shots at the rim. At least 4. And we saw this against Dallas. He missed a couple of really bad ones. And the Wolves as a whole did. I mean, Dallas, Jalen Noel, Taurean Prince were also culpable when it came to missing bunnies at the rim. But Anthony Edwards, it's like it's in his head now. It's almost like he has the yips at the rim, which is crazy because he's arguably, the most athletic guy in the NBA, top 2 or 3 athletes, certainly in the NBA. And who knows if the knee or there was also an ankle near the All-Star break, right before the All-Star break, I think. Who knows if those things are affecting him a little bit, but he's certainly explosive enough to get to the rim. And it's almost like he has the yips, and he's just kind of like, he gets there and there was one where he basically short-armed a finger roll at the rim, and it's like either throw it down or just complete it, right? To follow through. There wasn't It just looked uncomfortable and awkward. But he also there was one really nice kind of scoop, almost a sky hook type, like a sky hook into a scoop shot, like an MJ type move at the front of the rim I think it was late first half. The first half? No, it was late second. It was second half. But by and large, the down the stretch execution by the big three for Minnesota was not good. I mean, Russell had 6 points. Towns finished with 15, of course, in just 31 minutes, and Edwards had 19. But he missed. He was under 7 of 17 from the floor, 4 turnovers. Down the stretch, very disappointing execution wise from the Timberwolves' best players. Last key takeaway is Jared Vanderbilt, Jalen Noel. Now, Vando had his issues defensively with DeAndre Ayton, but again, that was execution by the Suns. It was Vando can only do so much given his athletic talents, or I should say his size more than his athletic talents, and also given the Wolves scheme, right? He was kind of put on an island more often than not in this game with DeAndre Ayton. Vando had one of his better games in a while. 12 points, 12 rebounds, shot 5 of 11, had a couple nice dunks, really only missed there was a couple of bad shots from him. But generally, a good performance from Vando. Good to see him perform well again. And then Jalen Noel, again, the man dominates and only plays 12 minutes. He was 10th on the Timberwolves in minutes played in this game. But you could argue he was one of their best two or three. Nope, he certainly was one of their best 3 players in this game. 15 points on 5 of 9 shooting, 3 of 5 outside the arc, 3 made threes in this game. He didn't do anything else. No rebounds, no assists, no steals, no blocks, which is a little weird. But I mean, that was the role, right? A lot of this was second quarter. He scored 8 quick points, had a couple of threes and a 2 in short order as he did the microwave scorer thing. And that's what Jalen Noel can do for you. He was fantastic in this game and deserved a better fate than just 12 minutes. It wouldn't shock me if Chris Finch again rights that wrong as he's done in the past and gives a little bit more Noel in Friday's game. And by the way, this could have been a solution. Now it would have been a gutsy move for Chris Finch to put Jalen Noel in the game at the expense of, he couldn't afford to take Vando off the floor because of the rebounding and because of the struggles they were having anyway in the paint. You couldn't afford to really go small. But maybe to play Noel in place of D'Angelo Russell. And I know that Russell's Mr. Ice in his veins and he's the clutch shooter that everybody believes in. But the offense was so bad in the fourth quarter that the second guess here is do you put Noel in for D'Lo and see what happens? I mean, Noel could replicate some of the shot creation for himself and for others that D'Angelo Russell does. He was so good in the first half of this game. Why not roll the dice there when you get down 8-10 points with just a few minutes left? That's in hindsight what I would have done. And something, it wouldn't shock me if we see more Jalen Noel minutes on Friday. Okay, let's close the show today by looking at individual studs and duds, as we always do. First, so let's talk about our friends over at BetOnline. It's that time of year again as college basketball's tournament is finally upon us. And again, today it's back underway. 16 teams left in that tournament. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, betonline.net is the #1 source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports, scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, let's close this thing by talking individual studs and duds. This was a weird one in that nobody scored more than 19 points. The Wolves still had 6 guys scoring in double figures. It's a little bit tough to parse this one because they were in the game because of, obviously because of Anthony Edwards, but he also missed so many shots at the rim, turned it over 4 times. But given the struggles of Towns and Russell at times in this game, I'm still going to give Anthony Edwards a stud. I think he played well enough defensively on Devin Booker early in the game, being physical, making life difficult. Booker didn't really have a major impact until the fourth quarter. And obviously at that point, it was extremely impactful. But I mean, I still thought Edwards played a good game, and especially some of the issues we've seen from him lately. Again, partially injury induced and fatigue induced, I'm sure. But 19 points on 7 of 17 shooting, 3 of 8 outside the arc. He only had 2 free throw attempts on 17 shots. He was just 4 of 9 on 2-point attempts. And of those 9, at least 4 of the 5 missed shots were easy shots at the rim that were barely even contested. And there were, 2 shots that I noted that he should have gone to the free throw line on, 2 attempts at the rim. But 4 of those 5 misses were very makeable shots at the rim. He also had 4 assists and 4 rebounds. Again, he did lead the team lead the team. I don't know if that's the right way to say that. He did commit 4 turnovers in this game, but he was the best of the Wolves' big 3 overall. Towns had enough defensive issues. D'Lo had some defensive issues. And of course, the foul trouble for Cat puts them both kind of, Towns in no man's land. We'll get to D'Lo in a minute here, but I think easy to tell which category he's going to be in. It's tempting to give Vando a stud because of the 12 and 12, but defensively, again, not all his fault, but I can't give him a stud because of the issues the Wolves had defensively in this game. For me, it's got to go to Malik Beasley and Jalen Noel off the bench. I mean, those guys kept the Wolves afloat in the second quarter. And then again in the third quarter, late third quarter, there was an all bench unit. By the way, I meant to mention this earlier. At one point in the second quarter, the Wolves had Patrick Beverley, Deandre Russell, and Jalen Noel all on the court together. And then I think it was with Vando and Naz Reid. So Noel was playing the 3, which I thought was really interesting. I digress. I just wanted to throw that in there because I don't know that we've seen that lineup very much at all this season. Again, with Naz at center, not with Towns. And it lasted for like 2 minutes and they did fine, but I thought it was unique. Fourth quarter, or I should say late third quarter, the Wolves made a nice run. I mean, the Suns cut it to like 2 or 3 points. The Wolves pushed it back to, I think it was like an 8-point lead. Maybe I guess it was an 8. It got back to 8, and then it got back down to like 5 or something headed to the fourth quarter. But that was an all-bench lineup in the game. Malik Beasley and Jalen Noel were really good. I mean, they combined to shoot 7 of 13 from outside the arc. They combined to shoot 9 of 18, so 50% from the field. Malik actually had 4 rebounds in 23 minutes and did a bit more than you'd expect. It was a really quiet 15 and 4 for Malik Beasley, but he had a good game. Knocked down 3-pointers when given the opportunity. Same thing with Jalen Noel. A lot of his damage of his 15 points was done in the second quarter, but he only played 12 minutes. Both of those guys were really good in a game that the big 3 struggled with consistency. Malik Beasley and Jalen Noel, both studs in this game. Duds, I'm going to highlight one. That's D'Angelo Russell. Tough game for D'Lo. 0-5 outside the arc, 6 points, 7 assists, 3 rebounds, only the 1 turnover, but he also only played 27 minutes. He missed his only free throw attempt, and that was on a technical attempt. Didn't get to the line at all on his own accord. 3 of 9 shooting overall, 0-5 on 3-point attempts. He had a couple of amazing dimes. I mean, the no look to Jordan McLaughlin. I know that they've been doing this, the late pass, the late hands. It's almost like an NFL, a receiver with the late hands, like pretending like the ball's not coming, and then he puts his hands up. That's how Jordan McLaughlin received the pass. But the straight up no look, D'Lo never looking once, whistling the pass past 2 defenders' ears to McLaughlin for basically an uncontested layup in traffic somehow because it was so unexpected, was phenomenal. We're seeing that almost every game now from D'Lo. He had a couple of other pocket passes, pick and roll deliveries that were just amazing. But the shooting, the lack of impact besides the assists and the defensive issues for D'Lo, this was a tough one. Again, 6, 7, and 3 of 9 shooting, missed all 5 3-point attempts, 0 of 1 at the line for D'Lo. He was, by the way, a team worst for what it's worth. And again, lots of grains of salt with single game plus minus. Team worst minus 14 for D'Lo in this one. Okay, that's all I have. This is a fun game. And even without Chris Paul, there's no shame, and without Cam Johnson, there's no shame in losing to the Phoenix Suns. It's just disappointing the way they collapsed at the end. And different than the Mavs game, but similar in that it was fun. They played well. It was a disappointing loss because they easily could have won the game. But they're going toe-to-toe with these teams that are playoff teams, and in the Suns' case, the best team in the league, even if they are a little bit shorthanded. And I don't think it's, we shouldn't gloss over that. Now, that said, we said coming into the 7-game stretch, this is going to be a tough stretch, right? We knew it coming in. We're 3 games in. The Wolves beat the Bucks, of course, with no Giannis. They lost the Mavs by 2. They lost to the Suns by 9. They're now 1-2 during the stretch. And it's going to get tougher because they go on the road. I mean, I guess it doesn't get tougher than playing the Suns, but they go at home for Dallas Friday, which they really have to win because then the next 4 are on the road, and 3 of them are against playoff teams: Boston, Toronto, and Denver. At Denver, such a big game next Friday night. So the next 4 games, the Wolves have to win at least 2 of them to emerge from the stretch. What would they be then? They'd be, even if they just win 2 of the next 4, they come out of the stretch at 3-4. Yep. Yeah. 3-4, which is not ideal. But I said coming into this, the Wolves could go 4-3 or 3-4, understanding that sounds like settling, roughly right around 500. But if you're talking, you play 7 playoff teams and you go 4-3 or 3-4, that's not awful. Especially with 4 of the games on the road. So Wolves have to beat Dallas on Friday because going better than 2-1 on this road trip would be really difficult. So Dallas at home on Friday, then at Boston Sunday, at Toronto next Wednesday after 2 days off, which will be nice, and then at Denver next Friday before taking on the Rockets the following Sunday. So really tough stretch upcoming. Hopefully the Wolves can stay relatively healthy. Of course, Towns has still been on the injury list with the forearm contusion, but overall, the Wolves are generally healthy, and they need to, well, obviously Jaden McDaniel's not playing, but they have to keep it that way here over the next 4+ games. All right, that's all we have for you today here on the show. Of course, we'll be back on Friday. We'll preview that Wolves-Mavs matchup on Friday, what we could take out of Monday's loss to Dallas and apply it to Friday's game as the Wolves finish off this 2-game homestand. Thank you again for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, the show is free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, Odyssey, anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can hear this podcast. Again, Locked On Wolves is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. The Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. And as long as you're making us your first listen, please consider making your second listen Locked On NBA. It's, again, our Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. Those are the two. If you're going to pick two other listens, Locked On NBA and Locked On Now are the best way to stay up to date on all things NBA. Our experts do a great job with both of those shows to keep you apprised of all the action that's happening around the league on a daily basis. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.